Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are. Hosted by Desiree Duffy.
Tonight, we're talking about books that make you want to solve a mystery. Yeah, mysteries. One of the most popular genres ever. We all love a good mystery. From early on, we read Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, Sherlock Holmes, Agatha Christy. The list goes on, doesn't it? Now, what is it, though, that makes mysteries so enticing? Why do we like to wonder why? It's like figuring out a puzzle, right? And you get the experience, the thrill of being a sleuth, but from the safety of your couch or under the covers in your bed. Nice and cozy. That's why they call them cozy mysteries, after all. Our guest today knows a thing or two about writing mysteries. Her first book is called Baker's Dozen. It is a Lexi Fagan mystery. And we have Autumn Doerr. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Desiree.
You are welcome. So let's start big. I want to know, do you have the answer to the age-old question, why do people enjoy mysteries?
I might, Desiree. Tune in. So I always think that, since life is a mystery and people are a total mystery, like we don't know what motivates most people most of the time. We don't know where our life is going to go. So just the idea that just life is mysterious and we're all trying to figure it out. And the reason why we love mysteries, television shows, we love books, they're, like you said, they're one of the most popular genres ever, is that they get solved. There's an answer. There's often a motive for what happens. People figure things out and there's a button at the end. And that is just not the way life is. But we find it very satisfying, probably because, we've been storytelling forever around the campfire and it always helps it to hook you in. Even the Neanderthals were probably sitting around the fire, hooking people in with little teases of scary things. And the mysteries are solvable. It's wonderful genre, I think. It's my favorite.
Right. And I think the puzzle-solving aspect of it, too. Because,
right.
Yes, we're solving the mystery, but we're also given those clues that lead us along the way.
Yeah, so that's part of the hard part about writing a mystery is just figuring out the MacGuffins, like what avenues are you going to go down, and you don't want people to never be able to guess because then it just leaves them kind of cold. They want to be able to go down a path, and also they kind of sometimes, especially in like a cozy and my kind of mysteries, they want to solve something along the way. They want to figure it out just as you want them to figure it out, and they're like, oh, and then that makes them feel really good. And at least especially when I'm a reader too, I love that part where you sort of figure something out early on and it's right. And then you could keep going down the road. And when everyone's a suspect, it just makes it more juicy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, and I imagine that's a fine balance for you as a mystery writer that you want them to figure things out and to feel satisfied. But at the same time, you don't want to make it too easy, right?
Yeah, that's really the hardest part. I mean, that's probably why it took me so long to write my first book, because I had never written a mystery. I've never written a book, but not written a mystery. I had to figure out where to pull back, and that took a lot of time. And I actually had a reader who reads all the time. She probably reads several books a day. And she said early on, she was an early reader, and she said, I knew who it was right away. And, so I took that note and I made it a little harder to figure out who it was. And some people don't ever figure it out. That feedback was really important because I was like, well, that's dull. She knew who it was as soon as she read who it was. Early on in the book, she knew.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when you're crafting it, do you know who did it, or are you plotting it out so that you are almost working it backwards so that, okay, I know that it was the butler in the kitchen with the pipe wrench, and then you kind of work it backward? or how do you decide how that's all going to flesh out?
You know, it's funny because for the first book, for the Baker's Dozen, I knew who had done it. And then things shifted as I was writing. So I didn't have an outline or anything. I just had an idea for a story. I started to write it, and I got 60 pages sort of in there and thinking, well, that's good. That's a book. And then I sent it to an editor, and she's like, that's not a book. And so, you know, she sort of showed me how, which was fantastic, how to structure it and what to turn into dialogue and and how to introduce MacGuffins and all that stuff, how to do it. So that was more, Baker's Dozen was more a discovery of who and how things were going to happen, and also where were my MacGuffins going to come from? Where were my stories that were just hints that something else had happened, but not that. But my second book, which is going to be called Free for All, I'm writing now. I'm doing an outline. I know who did it. I actually know every little beat of the story, so it's so much different to write this book. And so much easier because then you can if you have an outline, you can fill in the story as you go, and it's just easier it's just easier. I have to say, outlines are great.
Mm-hmm. MacGuffins. Mm-hmm. I love that word. You tell us.
I know, isn't it great?
It's a great. Do I have MacGuffins? Can I get some? Where do I find them?
Yeah, anybody can have a MacGuffin. So a MacGuffin is just basically you are hinting at. In most storytelling, and you're a writer too, so you know this, that everyone sort of has a secret or something they're trying to hide or a motivation you can't figure out. And those things, that secret in mysteries becomes a kernel of you thinking that they might be a suspect. So that's what a MacGuffin is, that everyone's little secret that they sort of reveal as it goes along, or that the detective, or as my case, the amateur detective figures out is not, it's just a secret. It's their secret, but it doesn't mean they're a murderer. Mm-hmm. So but I think they use that in all writing, there's just, in order to plant seeds and have characters grow and have character arcs, it really helps to have that little secret that is the thing. But in books, it's definitely, they call it a MacGuffin because it's like you think, oh, they did it, and then you discover that they didn't, and then you keep going down the road like, well, then who did it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So in a way, everybody has their own MacGuffins, right?
Yeah.
We all have our own little secrets.
Exactly. We all have our secrets.
So tell us how or why were you inspired to write specifically mysteries? What is it about mysteries that drew you into the genre?
I really loved, when I was a kid, we used to have this thing called Sunday Night Mysteries. When there was just like 3 channels. So yes, kids, there were only 3 channels at one time. And when there were 3 channels, Sunday Night Mysteries, they'd have like Columbo and Murder, She Wrote with Jessica. It was just these great little mysteries, and I loved them. And then as I got older, I got into reading mysteries, and I really loved, I love Sue Grafton. She's one of my favorites, and she's really inspired me. I loved how she had her life and her friendships were part of the story. So it wasn't just this sort of like boom, 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 we're going to action, and everything just flies by. There were little moments where you got to see her life and her in the office and what she did in her office. And, it was just so interesting, and how she had this friend, and she had a neighbor who was a dear friend of hers. And I loved how she did that. So when I started thinking, well, I would love to write a book, I thought, well, I'll write this mystery. I had the idea, and then I sort of used her way as a model. I introduced characters who were her friends, Lexi's friends, and then I just got a little bit into her life, like what was her life in San Francisco, and she had a cat, and it just expands your world so much. To me, it did, to expanded it, and I felt like I could write one. It didn't have to be, a hard-boiled mystery, because you have these ideas about what the books are like and the genres. And it really freed me to be like, you could write it this way. It's been done.
Sure. And you use the term cozy mystery, and we've all heard that. A cozy mystery is one, I feel like, where you're just snuggling up and you're nice and warm in front of a fireplace. Maybe you got some hot cocoa. But you kind of took that idea of a cozy mystery and just twisted a little bit. Can you talk about that? Like, first start off by just explaining what a cozy mystery is, and then how you kind of pivoted with that idea.
Oh, yeah. So Cozy Mysteries, they're really fun books. So they are more of a light mystery. So there's very little violence. There's, no sex. I mean, it's just maybe kissing and there's a romance, but romance just stays there. So no sex. And it's usually an amateur detective, and it's usually a woman, and she'll have a bakery, or she runs a wine shop, or she knows about cheese. There's some, it's couched in a lot of maybe even recipes. So it's more about a little adventure, like you can identify with this person as you're reading it, and none of it is taxing or scary. So they're just fun to read. People they read them like crazy. They go through the books a lot. So when I was first writing the mystery, people were saying, well, you should try to write cozies because they're so popular. And Hallmark is actually buying up a ton of cozy mysteries to do because you see them all the time. It's their whole new genre. They have got the cozy mystery market, and they make them into the movies, and they're, delightful and light and fun. But as I was writing, I got to the bakery part. My protagonist works in a bakery, and I worked in a bakery, so I was like, that's easy for me to describe, and that part I got down. But then it was so much fun for me to write a sex scene. It was actually, I just thought it was easy and fun to write sex scene, and also, so my romance goes a little further, and then the violence, like a fight scene, is a blast to write. If you're a writer, writing fight scenes, I think is really fun. So I thought, well, I can't really technically say I'm a cozy writer. So I thought, well, I could say that I'm an urban cozy writer because it does fall a lot into the urban cozy outline, because she's an amateur, she's a young person, she's an amateur detective, she's not a real detective. She's just kind of figuring out how it works and how to figure out her life at the same time she's trying to solve a mystery. So I really like that term, and I think it stuck. Urban mystery stuck.
I love it. It's awesome. And I like as well how you pull in your real history, because your heroine is in San Francisco, and you spent time in San Francisco as well. And like you said, you worked at a bakery. She works at a bakery. Can we talk about how your history and your real life experiences influence your writing?
Oh, yeah. That's one of the advice you get. I've always wanted to be a writer, and I've taken classes, and I've read books, and, just trying to figure out how to be a writer. And they all say, write what you know. And it sounds great, and you hear it all the time, but it doesn't really hit you until you find a story from your past that becomes a story. And that, to me, was the discovery of that. And I felt like such a dope, of course, because other people hear that and they go, okay, I'll write about something in my past. But for some reason, it never hit until I'd just been trying for so long, and the right story came. So I did live in San Francisco in the 80s, and I worked in a bakery, and I was a young girl from a small town. Mm-hmm. Moving to the big city. So, it sparked my imagination, because I worked in a bakery, and across the street from the bakery was a hotel. And this hotel, one day that I was working at a bakery, and I was probably 18, 19 years old, and the hotel caught on fire, and it started to go up in flames, and it was really traumatic. And, it was traumatic for me because I was kind of in charge. I was the only one there. It was the morning, and I had to figure out, do I close? What's happening here? And the lights went out, and we stayed open, and, it was very dramatic. It was a dramatic moment. And all the years later, when I thought of that moment, it started to turn into an actual story that turned into a mystery. And I finally figured out, Desiree, because I'm a little dense, how to write from my life, how to make fiction from things you know.
Right. Well, yeah, and that is so true. They always say, write what you know.
They do.
Pull from your real, experiences. And it really is amazing. I identify with that a lot, because you pull from an experience. And sometimes I love the fact that you use the word spark to describe the fire, but it's one moment in time that you can pull from, and how you've created this entire mystery. It's fictional, but it was inspired by that real event. And in your book, why don't you tell us a little bit about, without giving too much away, tell us a little bit about Lexi and how this fire impacted her, and her firefighter, unfortunately, the poor guy, her firefighter boyfriend. Yeah, tell us a little bit.
So Lexi is a young woman. She's just a little bit out of high school, and she's not college bound. So she lives in a tiny little town in Alaska, and she moves to San Francisco to reinvent herself, which I think is pretty universal. The feeling that you just want to figure out who you are and what you want from life. So she moves to the big city, San Francisco, and she gets this job, and she gets a boyfriend, and then this horrible fire happens, and he disappears, and it appears that he's died in an accident, and then it turns into a bigger mystery than that. And she's sort of pulled into the mystery. She's pulled into the investigation, and decides to just figure it out. She's not going to be a victim of people, false accusations, or people that are sort of trying to manipulate the situation. So she gets right in there and she tries to figure it out. So it's really a story of self-discovery as well as a mystery. And that was the most fun for me, to take a character that was like me, kind of clueless in the big city, and figure out how she becomes sort of a person, and how she takes action and takes control of her life, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well,
yeah.
She is. She's a very endearing, a very relatable, likable character. And characters are what really drive good stories, in my opinion.
Uh-huh. I think you're right, Desiree.
Tell us a little bit about your time or your experience working within the entertainment industry as well, because I think that's really fascinating, because you've worked on shows that, in a lot of ways, reveal mysteries, reality TV that tells the viewer, tells the audience about these, amazing things. And I like the fact, or I don't like the fact, but I'm intrigued by the fact that sometimes the things that we think are mysterious, or things that are shown to us on reality TV that are, supposed to be revealing something like UFOs, or revealing the truth behind Hitler. Sometimes people don't realize how much entertainment is really infused into that, as opposed to how much reality is there.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is, and I've said this forever, ghost stories never get old. I mean, people love them. And I think they're kind of like mysteries, in that there's something about them that's just really deeply ingrained in us as people to want to believe. And I've worked on ghost stories. I've worked on reality shows, and it might have really informed me being a writer, just that you have to write a lot on those shows, even though they're not technically written. And just that they're it's hard to describe, but they really are more about manipulation, and also casting people that are extreme. And the truth is, people love those shows. They love reality shows, and I'm not sure why, but I like to just give it to them. Like, even though I could tell them till the cows come home that most of it isn't real, and that I was able to manipulate people into situations they didn't really want to be in, because that's they want to be famous. And so they're kind of willing to do a lot of stuff to be famous. And so I will tell them that, that's how many fashion shows do you think there really are in the world? When they watch the reality show, it's like, there's another fashion show, there's another musician, they're going to have a singing career. So I think, well, that's a producer's idea. But yeah, so it is a great field to be in. It's fun, actually, to work on shows like that. But they're really they're not as real as people think they are. But again, if you love them and they're your favorite kind of show, enjoy. Just enjoy.
Right, yeah. And we're not pointing out exactly what shows we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think if people realize, much like I equate it with tabloids. At the supermarket. Right. Bat Boy isn't real. Like, you should know that. But if you want to read about it and experience that moment of fantasy, it's fine. I think the important thing is for people to realize that when we're talking about reality TV, or, a lot of the things that are out there, take it with a grain of salt and
Exactly.
use your head a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Don't take it all for real. But it's a great field. I love working in television, and it's funny because when I first started television, what we would call a reality show were real stories of people doing things, and they were more like documentaries. So you'd tell the story of, let's say, a woman rescuing her son from an accident or something, and then you'd show a recreation of what happened, and it was very real and true. It was more like journalism. Mm-hmm. And then that morphed into, people living their lives on camera, which most people's lives, including mine, you would not want to see because they're dull. So, in order to have something that people want to watch, it has to be heightened. It has to be, yes, and that heightened cannot be real because people can't survive, if their lives are always dramatic like that. So
right.
Yeah.
I remember too watching shows like, I think of the show In Search Of. I loved that show because it was all these mysteries, whether it was ghosts or Loch Ness Monster or UFOs, but it's one of those things as you grow up, it's like, okay, those are based on true stories. And I'm not, going to knock that. But at the same time, sometimes you look at the ancient alien type shows and the ghost adventurer type shows. And again, you just got to kind of take it with a little bit of a grain of salt because there is a lot of entertainment factor involved.
Yeah, and it's really meant to be fun. It's meant to be entertainment, I'm not sure why they feel like they have to. I guess that element is, that it's real. It's really, again, just to get people to watch, but they are meant to be fun. And I'll say, I've never seen a ghost story that wasn't, that people didn't want to hear. They love them. It's great.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We love to be scared.
Yeah.
Are you a creepypasta fan at all?
What's that?
Creepypasta is a website, and the rules for it are basically that you tell a story, you can tell a narrative, but you do it in such a way that it feels and looks real. Wow. And there's been lots of creepypastas, and the whole idea within the community is that you don't necessarily pull back the curtain and expose that it's not true. Everybody goes along with it. So the people that are talking about it on the message board, nobody reveals that it isn't true, but everybody knows that it's a ghost story. It's somebody telling a story.
Ooh, I think that sounds like fun.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to everybody knows that it's, these mysteries aren't necessarily true.
Right, but they take them down the road of everyone pretending like it's real. So that would give it a certain heightened appeal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like going to the theater. You know that what you're seeing on the stage isn't real. They're actors. They're portraying something, but everybody goes along with it, and that's what makes it fun.
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah. All right. Tell us what's coming next, because we talked about Baker's Dozen and you alluded to the next book. So what more can we expect from you, Autumn?
So the second book in this Lexi Fagan series is Free for All, and Lexi is working at a Freedom Institute, which is a think tank in San Francisco. And again, there's a murder, and this time there's, it starts with a murder actually. And she is working again. The detective that is on the case is the same detective from the first book, Detective Rieger, and he has a bigger role in this book where he's more of a character. We get to see his life and their friendship and why they're friends becomes that's revealed, why he actually kind of trusts her and likes this kid, even though he's kind of a seasoned detective. So that's really fun to write. So I'm halfway through, and fingers crossed we'll be able to get it done by the end of the year, at least to an editor by the end of the year.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
And I love it too that you're taking his character and kind of delving in a little bit more so that we're being, his background and his motivations are being revealed.
Yeah, well, thanks. It is so far. I'm enjoying it. As as a writer, if you like what you're writing, you're like, this is really fabulous. So I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, that's the best. Tell me what you like to read, or what you're reading right now, or what you might recommend to other people to read, especially if they like mysteries.
I just finished Walter Mosley's most recent book, Under the Sea. I think it's called Under the Sea. It was really good. He's very gritty. He is way beyond any cozy. It's real gritty, real violent, but it's a wonderful book. He's a terrific writer. And then, what's funny? I'm reading Anne Rice again, and I may have outgrown her because I loved her when I was much younger when she first started writing the Lestat series. But I'm feeling a little nostalgic, so I'm going back to Anne Rice to see if I can still read her. She has a new book in the Lestat series.
She does.
Yeah.
She does,
Did you read it?
No, I haven't, but I'm definitely aware of it and big fan of Interview with the Vampire.
Me too. So good. But again, we'll see. We'll see if I can still read her, but I loved her when I was younger. You go through periods of time when you're like devouring every book in a genre. That was mine.
So tell me a little bit about that. So if somebody is listening and maybe they haven't read mysteries, they're aware that they exist, but what would you suggest for them to start off with if they've never really delved into the genre before? Where would you point them?
Conan Doyle, the Sherlock mysteries are so good. They're kind of written in an old-fashioned way. I'm not sure if they would be that popular. Same thing with Agatha Christy. They're really dense and brilliant books. But it is funny when you get back into them. They are a little dated in how they're structured. I would read Sue Grafton. She's fantastic. Her Alphabet series is wonderful, and Dorothy Sayers is great. There's so many. But I would start with those. The British really know how to write mysteries. Oh, Tana French. Tana French is terrific. I think she writes in Dublin, about some detectives, and each book has a different character in the police force where they focus on them. She's a great writer.
Oh,
Tana French. Oops, I don't know which one, but she's terrific.
Okay, that sounds fascinating.
Oh yeah, she's great.
Excellent. So where can people find out more about you, your books, social media? Tell us where we can find Autumn Doerr.
Well, Autumn Doerr, and it's spelled like the season, Autumn, and Doerr is Doerr, which is a weird spelling of door. You can go to autumndoerr.com. That's my website, and you can get Baker's Dozen on Amazon. And I'm on Facebook as Autumn Doerr Author, and that's me.
Excellent. Well, Autumn, thank you so much for being here. This has been such a pleasure.
Oh, Desiree, this was so great and so much fun. I love talking about books and writing.
Well, we'll have you back again then sometime. How's that?
Okay. Thanks, Desiree.
You are welcome. Once again, my name is Desiree Duffy. Thank you for being with us today on Books That Make You. And you can find out more about Books That Make You on the website. That's booksthatmakeyou.com. And you can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, enjoy all the books that make you who you are.
The executive producer for Books That Make You is Desiree Duffy. Produced and sound mastered by Phil Giangrande. Engineering by Dave Nabox. Social media and promotion by Bree Sweeter. For more, visit booksthatmakeyou.com.